With all the research I've gone through over the past 50 or 60 years, this next chapter, which is chapter 10, is called A Second Covenant. Now, so many of us have been under a misconception the laws of the commandments were an integral part of the covenant. After some time and a more rigorous read-through of many passages, Jesus spoke to the crowds in parables. To his disciples, they were passages of astute learning guides as to how they must behave if they were to be Jesus' disciples. Much later, after Jesus' death, a letter to St. Timothy from St. Paul clarifies this issue. As in Book 1 of Timothy, chapter 1, verse 8, "But we know that the law is good if a man uses it rightly, knowing that the law is not made for the just, but for the unjust, the rebellious, for the ungodly and sinners, for criminals and the defiled, for parricides and matricides, for murderers, for immoral people, for sodomites, for kidnappers, for liars, for perjurers, and whatever else is contrary to the sound doctrine, according to the gospel of the glory of the blessed God." Now in Romans, that's chapter 2, verse 12, "For whoever has sinned without the law will perish without the law, and whoever has sinned under the law will be judged by the law. For it is not they who hear the law that are just in the sight of God, but it is they who follow the law that will be justified. When the Gentiles who have no law do by nature what the law prescribes, those having no law are a law unto themselves." Now in Romans chapter 2, verse 15, "They show the works of the law written in their hearts. Their conscience bears witness to them, even when conflicting thoughts accuse or deny them, or defend them. Therefore, when Jesus was alive and heaven sent to deliver the new covenant," this is an agreement, "compassion is required when using the law of the commandments. But while reading the historical accounts of the Jewish enclave from their inception, it reads of them taking up with their Gentile counterparts and ignoring the God of their ancestors. Now, as youthful Christians, we were to understand the covenant was cast in stone and unbreakable when God made it. I was nearly jolted out of my chair when I read of a second covenant. It all begins to come together as to why Christ was to come, so as to bring it in the flesh. The Gospels teach us how to behave, but it's the epistles that enlighten us on the multitude of missions Jesus was sent to connect with the populace. Now in Hebrews, chapter 8, verse 6, "But now he has obtained a superior ministry in proportion as he is mediator of a superior covenant, enacted on the basis of superior promises. For had the first been faultless, place would not, of course, be sought for a second." Now in Hebrews, chapter 8, verse 8, "For finding fault with them, he says, Behold, days are coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to lead them forth out of the land of Egypt, for they did not abide by my covenant, and I did not regard them, says the Lord." Okay, there's a majority of the Jewish enclave refusing to keep their end of the bargain, opened the doors for the Gentile to be welcome into Christianity, and no longer necessary to practice the same rituals that as Judaism teaches. Now in Hebrews chapter 8, verse 13, "Now in saying a new covenant, he has made obsolete the former one, that which is obsolete and has grown old is near its end." Hebrews 9:15, "And this is why he is mediator of a new covenant, that whereas a death has taken place for redemption from the transgressions committed under the former covenant, they who have been called may receive eternal inheritance according to the promise. Now, it was in Jeremiah of the Old Testament we read of a dire warning given to Israel. Of course, Israel is our staunch allies, but what if it were to be overrun with zealots who want to overturn the status quo and align themselves with non-Christian entities, as the Israelites once did while living among agnostics? Now in Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 36, if these ordinances shall fail before me, saith the Lord, then also the seed of Israel shall fail, so as not to be a nation before me forever. Now Jeremiah 31, verse 37, thus saith the Lord, if the heavens above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, I will cast away all the seed of Israel, for all that they have done, saith the Lord. That is quite an ominous warning of possible future events that must be taken into consideration if the world is to find its way through such turmoil. Now it is in Exodus, we'll return back to Exodus, when Moses is given the word of the Israelites' importance above the Gentiles and why such grace what grave concern is shown to Jeremiah. Returning back to Exodus. Now Exodus 19, verse 4, you have seen what I have done to the Egyptians, how I carried you upon the wings of eagles and have taken you to myself. Now in Exodus chapter 19, verse 5, if therefore you will hear my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my particular possession above all people, for all the earth is mine. Now in Exodus 19, verse 6, and you shall be to me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. These are the words thou shalt speak to the children of Israel. Now after so much warnings, the Israelites failed to live up to the standards they proposed would be done. It was inevitable that their contract would then have to be rescinded. God once prepared to do away with his creation until Moses interceded and asked for mercy. It is a reminder of this intercession that a new covenant would be enacted.